Like, I learned to deal with this just on like video comments. People will make a comment, maybe it's like a criticism or something, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, that's a fair critique, but you don't want to listen to them because of the way they said it. And sometimes people will get in there and they'll talk exactly like they know how like the production process works. Like, oh,
for the rest of you out there, like
Nintendo, no excuse for wasting the player's time having a
So for the past few years on YouTube, we've seen the rise of various sorts of critics, whether they are more analytical or the more comedic, or somewhere in between. Critics come in many shapes and sizes, some quite bigger than others, sometimes literally. And that's one of the beauties of the internet, where if you're some schmuck with a camera or a microphone and somewhat competent in the editing software, you too can become one of the biggest critics of all time, who tear into the sort of media that others may enjoy, whether it be movies, books, video games, or even videos created by other people. It's rather interesting to see how over the course of many years that criticism evolved from the days of...
Let me ask a question. What do you get when you take a movie that's ass? What the ass is that all about? To describe this game's assness, all I can say is, it's very ass.
To today's standard of...
There will always be people for whom an experience just isn't for them, or who are too dumb to understand how to play something, or don't realize that something they think is good is objectively bad. Some people really like Fallout 3, and they seem to be the specific type of people who think clicking a dislike button is a decent way of expressing their feelings. In other words, objectively stupid people like Fallout 3.
Criticism of media today has been stronger than ever and has become a rather lucrative business model, whether it be more of the entertaining side to the more analytical side. Criticism is a very popular video style here on YouTube. However, there are things that make the analysis muddied and can drag down the video. And in fact, if you're willing to sit for a while, you can see what some people's goals are in their videos.
That's not to say the video is literally to blame for negativity towards Dark Souls 2, but regardless, it is necessary that this critique be defeated and destroyed at all costs.
So, here's the thing. I hate Trump.
Disclaimer, this is completely my opinion.
Because we reinforced only the fun stages to ourselves, we warped our own perspective on the game as a whole.
I don't see any rational adult male, or female for that matter, who'd want to play this game. It's a colourful little...
I love my own videos. I've made hundreds of videos about anime, making hundreds of great points.
Soma isn't really a horror game. It's not scary.
And frankly, I personally don't like it. I don't like it at all! I like reviews. I enjoy reviews. I enjoy the personalities behind them. I enjoy critiques. I enjoy analysis. But that doesn't mean that I can stand behind everything that is said in these sorts of videos. Now that I've wasted about, 2 minutes of your time, allow me to introduce myself. I am your host into this dive of critique, analysis, commentary, and possibly insanity, MangaKamen. I'm a rather simple guy with simple tastes. I'm not the sharpest katana around, but I certainly know what I like and what I don't like. I've also been told that I know a few things about thinking critically and how some people don't like that I do that. The theory is wrong.
Not the hater! Ah, the hater! There it is, there was the scream.
And for about 35k or so people, for better or for worse, they seem to think that I do a decent job of it.
Yeah, you've been doing this for a few years, now you got us 35k subs. Bravo, you're such a great...
With that stupidity out of the way, let me tell you how this video will go. This video will be divided up into chapters, and in each of those chapters, we'll be focusing on a singular topic, although I make no promise that the topics won't branch out or be related in other chapters that I bring up. I will be giving examples of creators who make these mistakes, I will be naming names, and I will be making jokes at not only their expense, but about everything. And notice that I said everything, not every one of the people that I'm about to name. Myself, my fans, my haters, the random schmucks who are watching this video, and that includes you.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stay tuned.
I apologize. According to my legal team, I am not allowed to make fun of the audience, especially those who are clicking on this video right now. But I can still make fun of them. Another aspect of this video that I'm warning you about is at this point I won't be alone at this. At different intervals in the video, I will be getting the opinions of the creators that I know and have at least one point or another may or may not have worked with. The purpose of this is to have possible outside opinions on the subject matter, and not just let my opinion on these videos be the be-all, end-all. After all, when it comes to opinions, there are many factors that come into play. How much information you have about the subject, whether that information is correct or not, and if the information is outdated or not, and several other factors. Getting outside opinions is rather important in this regard. Of course, if you don't care for that, each segment will have a timestamp that you can skip to listed in the video. In addition addition, in the description there will be a list of timecodes that you can click on that correlate to each specific part that I am talking about. More than likely you've already done so to skip my opening, and knowing how much of a cheeky ponce I can be, I probably made so if you did click on the first, you'll be hearing my words right here, so shame on you for skipping the introduction. I caught you, now go back to the beginning and watch this in full. But enough of my poor attempts at meta humor, let us begin, shall we? As I stated in the introduction, we've got a lot of types of critics here on YouTube, and for better or for worse, you've got your pick of whatever kind of critic you want to follow. Now, before we actually get into the video, I suppose I should point out that if I happen to name a certain creator or channel or whatever, then I'm sorry that you happen to like their videos, but know that it doesn't make you a demon for being absolutely wrong for liking them. Wait, wrong script. You can like people's content, you can dislike people's content, and hey, if I happen to get something wrong, which apparently half the comments in my comment section like to think I do, you have every right to call me out on it. But when it comes to critics on YouTube, it tends to be an odd situation. You've got the angry critics, you've got the day one critics, you've got the critics who like to just have fun with their craft, you've got the critics who like to analyze works, you've got the critics who overanalyze works, you've got the nitpickers, you've got the contrarians, you've got the jack... I think you get the idea. There are tons of critics and nearly the same amount of different types of reviewing styles. However, there are a number of trends that appear in quite a few critics and their styles, and what we're here to talk about today and how they...
It basically remade Banjo-Kazooie with new characters.
Hey, it's not 1998 anymore. We need something different.
Most people won't care about some of the more outdated elements that linger in this nostalgic trip down memory lane.
Do we really want an outdated 3D platformer like Banjo-Kazooie to simply be remade with different characters in the year 2017?
Playtonic have dragged almost kicking and screaming out of the 1990s without due reason, other than, hey, remember that? We'll do that again.
Ukulele suffers from almost all the same problems found in platformers from the late 1990s.
A game that doesn't pay homage to the past. It replicates it in ways that it really shouldn't.
What the fuck are you talking about? The fact that 3D platformers have been dead for about a decade, if not more.
The fact that ukulele relies so heavily on its predecessors ends up being one of the biggest problems.
It's not the great graphics. There's a lot of the game that would come out over decades ago.
It's definitely trying to be a tricky platform as a whole. Ukulele is a game out of time, both in terms of development cycle and its mechanics. Ukulele would fit right into the 90s, but the time has moved on since the N64 era.
A lot of people hear the term similar times, but there's a reason
why. Okay then, well rub up your keyboards, boys and girls, and prepare to tear into my butt with your comments. Whether it be critics mirroring points from each other, taking points from others, or making false claims, well, let's just say that I don't like it at all. And hey, not to be on my own high horse, I will say that I myself am guilty of doing these things in the past, that I'm about to complain about. However, the difference here is I'm willing to admit that I've fallen into these traps, and I'm willing to improve myself for the sake of myself and my audience in the future. I'll stumble here and there, but hey, as one of my favorite songs goes... And the same can be said for the people that I'm about to critique. Still won't stop me from tearing into them though. That being said, this video didn't come out of nowhere. For about a year or two, I've been sitting on the topic about reviewers and critics, from where their tactics and how they use logic in that regard. But it wasn't until a few videos that came out that finally pushed me into wanting to make this video. And I do say it was a combination of videos, but they aren't limited to just them. The first was BobVids with his video on CinemaSins, Sustaining Stupidity, Why CinemaSins is Terrible. The video was a great analysis of BobVids and how CinemaSins is terrible. Duh. Goes into the past of the channel and even talks about the issues with that type of content. It is a video that I would recommend to anyone, but... And don't be surprised if I reference this video within mine. The second video that comes to mind is from a channel called Sarah Z with her video concerning about bad media criticism, which is essentially the same topic as this video. However, after watching her video a few times, there are flaws in that video that I hold issue with media criticism. It's rather a bit ironic that there are issues with the video that you can find with other media criticism that you took inspiration from. The third video is from a YouTuber called Mauler, and his Star Wars The Force Awakens video. Or, I suppose you could also count that segment that he just took from... What, you get the idea! Or more specifically, it was the first hour of his video, which he actually did take and separate onto a second video, so I don't know why he... whatever. While from a video perspective I have issues with it, what he says in it for the most part is solid, and I would be lying if I didn't take inspiration from the first hour to make these discussions and give me a kick in the pants to get this video rolling. Of course, there are other videos and creators I take inspiration for in regards to this video, but I don't want to list them all in this segment since that'd be too much time, and besides I'm pretty sure I just tanked my watch time at this moment. Again though, as I said, and if you feel that I may have missed something or have misconstrued something, please feel free to enlighten me in the comments. All I ask is you try to make your comments readable and at least make sure your points are clear. And don't write in Swahili. I mean, as you can tell, I certainly don't have anything out of the hood that's that impressive.
I think criticism is a very interesting concept. Before the times of YouTube, critics were held in esteem, existing only in the publications. Now anyone with a microphone can talk about a subject with some conviction if they have an interest, maybe if they don't, and just want the views. And people have always had their opinions, but at the same time, that sort of lower budget appeal to a lot of YouTube creators has allowed them to convey their messages through means that would never have been considered in other mainstream outlets. And this is intriguing because many places have these algorithms. You have a 30-minute slot to fill or a certain column to summarize your thoughts in. Now there is a lot of flexibility for criticism, gimmicks, and entertainment. And that leads to a variety of takes. And I generally think that's a good thing. If someone has a level of entertainment that isn't confined by the archaic standards of the past, then great. Having that platform to promote themselves on is a good thing. There has been a lot of commentary that people feel that criticism is becoming too specific with certain points of view, focusing on particular elements, and to an extent I agree, but at the same time, it's still viable criticism in that person's eyes, and I think it has to be on you to make a better case in that instance. And so what has changed? Well, the thing is that the world of traditional criticism lived off a culture. Although there was a clear variation and obviously division within the sphere, I think the opening up of it to the YouTube world has enabled the possibility for much more creativity, but also cultural discussion in how films should be made in general, what elements matter more, what should be strived for, what is the aim of film. And people have always had disagreements about this, and there has been debate, but it feels that with YouTube these differences are being merged with the actual critical reviews of films a lot more actively, rather than just provoking discussion about the film's quality, but rather complementing it with some of the more deeper elemental questions, which I think is interesting as it makes film criticism much more ideologically based, and this eventually spills over into politics, and you find this weird phenomenon where people who are more left-wing end up enjoying certain films and people who are more right-wing enjoy others. A really good example of this is Star Wars The Last Jedi, which found many people's opinions correlating with some of their positions in their more political content. This doesn't mean that everyone felt that way, it was just more of a trend that we can observe. Generally, I like the fact that there is a wider discussion surrounding the notion of criticism itself, rather than just people presenting their opinions on film. The culture to actually respond to others seems to be provoking that more. And I feel like we'll see more of this in the future, because people definitely seem stimulated to direct discussion rather than just individual opinions, although they definitely have their place as well. I think the rise of the internet has diversified the type of criticism that content receives and will likely continue to do so. I'm not entirely sure what to think of it, but I'm certainly eagerly anticipating it.
Oh, hi, tiddly-dee. I wonder what this could be about. Thank you, Captain Obvious. So let's talk about the parody and the satire that is CinemaSins. And I realized that BobVids, the person I just brought up in the last segment, did an excellent job explaining the issues with them, but I figured that I'd bring a few points from that video here, so let's go through that quickly. CinemaSins getting things wrong. A lot. Now hold those comments, I know what you're going to say, just let me finish first. One of the major factors that makes me not want to take CinemaSins properly is due to the sheer amount of things they get wrong in their videos. Practically in every video you can find issues with their reasoning and how things just don't make sense. So enjoy this little montage.
Why would you kill yourself?
That, detective, is the right question.
Yet we still don't receive an answer.
Program terminated.
How and why did you record a program of your future interaction with a detective investigating your death before? Oh, forget it. This movie's IMDb score is low enough, I bet I can fake my way through this shit.
This is kind of ridiculous, since if you watch the film and then watch his video, you can actually take this pompous boast at face value, especially since the movie's IMDb score is a 7.1. Is that what people call low nowadays?
Kate harasses this one poor French lady when there's an entire bank of phones they could be stalking.
If you have eyes or have watched the film, you can see in the wide shot right before this, you can see that all the payphones are being used.
He says this upon seeing an apparent alien ship underground, but did not say this after they swam down into the deep of whatever and came out on the other side upside down and or after any of the other weird that's happened since they took those power coins.
The power coins were a term that was used in the original show. Marvel had nothing to do with it.
I mean, if Zordon used his energy to infuse Tommy, why couldn't we use ours? Meaning our power coins to infuse him.
So if we held them together and concentrate their energy towards Zordon, we can bring him back.
Shouldn't these villains have something more than clubs to protect their crime scene with? Surely a lord could spring for a gun, or lots of guns, right?
There's a bloody gun in the scene!
I had to take him down.
You shattered his collarbone! Wait, is Batman really trying to give lessons on not hurting criminals? Hypocrisy, thy name is Bruce.
Literally the next line.
He's a drug-dealing pimp. I didn't think I had to prop up some pillows before I took him out.
We needed him. He would have talked, but you put him into shock.
Sorry. That was dumb. But he deserved it.
And like I said, there are countless examples of this. Heck, there are channels that have made their careers on YouTube critiquing these issues and the mistakes that CinemaSins have in their videos. And now that I pointed this out, allow me to get to my second point regarding this. More often than not, whenever you talk about CinemaSins or channels that are blatantly ripping them off, more on that later, is that if you point out their mistakes in their videos, their fans will say, "You missed the point," because it's used under the guise of being a joke, or of being satire, or being parody. Hey, you guys remember Leafius here? Remember when he tried to justify him making fun of people under the guise of satire and how that sucked? It's almost the same premise here. People and even CinemaSins defend themselves under those defenses. However, like Bob Ditz and others have said, the fact that there are times where there are basic flaws in the jokes can also be explained by just, you know, paying attention to the film. It's a means of artificially creating flaws with the films in an attempt to add sins and jokes. This wouldn't be too bad if it wasn't for the fact that CinemaSins actually owns up to making them mistakes. You see, one of the ways that CinemaSins and their fans describe their brand of satire is that it's spoofing the overly analytical and nitpicky analysts that plagued the internet for years on end. But like I said, when they actually admit their mistakes, then this undermines that form of satire. If they were really dead set on them being satire, then they wouldn't care about being wrong. In fact, it would help their case if they made mistakes and didn't own up to them, since one of the aspects they play up is,
a lot of the mistakes we make are intentional. We're playing a character, a know-it-all, movie-obsessed, nitpicking asshole.
So why would someone like that care if they were wrong? In addition, if you have to artificially create faults in a movie, it muddies the water even further because there's also another factor to consider with this. They actually make legitimate complaints about the films. People can satirize things and make correct criticisms at the same time. Definitely something that is very possible to do. Creators like Shammy are capable of doing it at the same time in his videos. However, when you mix completely incorrect criticisms, even if it is for the sake of comedy, it will cause confusion among the fans. A channel who originally called CinSins recently put out a video on the matter, and I think it's important to let a clip of that video say this.
You're the nicest boy I know.
And the only boy she knows.
This sin is presented as a criticism of the film with comedic intentions behind it, essentially trying to prompt a reaction from the audience along the lines of, haha, isn't this film so dumb and silly? However, Jeremy is completely wrong here, and to demonstrate that, I'm just going to play the full scene that he's talking about.
You're the nicest boy I know, and I have 300 brothers.
If you play the full scene, you'll know that the sin is inaccurate. He's not the only boy she knows, she has 300 brothers. On top of all this, even if you were to remove that second line of dialogue so that she just says, "You're the nicest boy I know," and you removed all of her brother's appearances from the film, so that for its entire runtime we never hear her talking about or interacting with any other boy, the sin would still be inaccurate. This Wolf Girl character, whose name I can't be bothered to Google, is here on vacation, and that's the only context in which we see her in the film. There is no way of telling how many boys she knows in her personal life because we don't see her personal life. And this sin isn't some kind of isolated incident, by any means. He's wrong in a lot of places, but this is one of the easiest to demonstrate. CinemaSins here has misrepresented a movie so that they could make a joke at its expense. Knowing that Jeremy is wrong on this doesn't improve the joke. It means that the joke no longer works. Regardless of whether or not the intention behind this was to provide comedy or real film analysis, the error still detracts from the quality of the writing. And if you're a CinemaSins fan ready to disagree with me on this to tell me that there's something deeper I don't understand, or that this is somehow intended as satire, you know who does agree with me on this? CinemaSins fans. Under CinemaSins videos that feature more obviously incorrect sins like this, there's normally someone in the comments correcting him with hundreds and hundreds of upvotes.
Unfortunately, this is also something that people will often refer to in order to dodge criticism aimed at them. Gee, it's almost like I'm making this to be a point that I'm bringing up in the later part of the video. Imagine that! It goes against their original goal. Again, I need to bring up Bob's Bid videos, since he proved that by Jeremy's own words, one of the men who voices the majority of everything wrong with videos, that the original goal of the channels was this.
But here's the biggest flaw with CinemaSins' satire defense. In April of 2015, Disney announced that they'd be making a live-action Winnie the Pooh film. Angered by this, CinemaSins' Jeremy uploaded a video of himself explaining why he thinks that's a terrible idea.
You offend me, Disney. You offend me as somebody who has written and created original things. They're going to come in the comments and say, you make videos on YouTube using other people's movies. Blah-diddy-blah-diddy-blah. And yes, you're right, we also make a shit ton of other stuff. But more importantly, the reason we started that channel was to point out when Hollywood started slacking, started repeating too many things, started falling into tropes and cliches and cycles. That's the point of the whole channel, was to bemoan this shit.
To anyone who has ever defended CinemaSins as being just parody or satire, that was Jeremy, co-creator and voice of CinemaSins, stating flat out that the whole point of his channel is to criticize films. You have to admit, based on this and all the other evidence I've provided, that the core of what CinemaSins is attempting to accomplish is criticism, even if they occasionally add jokes.
So in some regard, criticism of the films is still a part of the actual videos that they make it out to be. Especially when you consider that some of the criticisms are things that Jeremy himself have made on his secondary channel, and that these criticisms also end up in CinemaSins videos.
Evidence to suggest CinemaSins are just being themselves in their videos. Take Jeremy Scott's CinemaSins Jeremy channel. I talked about this in my Age of Ultron video, but for those who don't know, Jeremy Scott is one of the co-creators of CinemaSins, and voices most everything wrong with videos. On his personal channel, Jeremy makes videos called Before and After Movie Reviews that feature his and his friends' thoughts about a film before and after they see it. The problem is that some of the criticisms Jeremy and his friends make about a film in these videos can be found repeated in Everything Wrong with content.
It suffers from character exposition-itis, like there's too many characters and we have to spend so much time getting to know each of them. That's why
not just that, but like even planets.
Exactly. This movie could easily have been called Getting to Know a Bunch of New Planets and
His explanation of a black hole.
Yeah.
That was one of those moments where I was like, all right, I'm no scientist, but you didn't. I mean, that even sounds like you dumbed it down for me, and you're talking to an astronaut.
Well, yeah, that he had to explain it in the first place to this guy that was the only guy who could fly this mission. Here, a genius NASA astronaut will explain the theory of wormholes to another genius NASA astronaut.
However, one of the bigger issues that Bob Vids neglected to talk about in his video about CinemaSins is the fact that CinemaSins is just as bad as the common cold, meaning it spreads quickly. Ever since the realization that CinemaSins format can make a lot of money, several clones appeared on the scene. Some cover movies as well, others cover video games, anime, hell, even as niche as My Little Pony had their own versions of CinemaSins. And when I say clones, I mean it. From lifting jokes, from taking the format of their videos, to sometimes even having the trademark punchable voice. Although, oddly enough, some of them also seem to have a lisp to them.
Just take a look at any one of my videos and you will see that I'm a clone.
Heck, some of the channels that even criticize CinemaSins also copy their format as well. Sorry, Sins. This isn't anything new on YouTube. If something that has proven to be a good formula that works, there's bound to be copycats. However, while it's something that is common to YouTube, that in no way means it's a good thing. Much how like we get low, easily made videos from the commentary community where they repeat the same points, reaction videos that use the exact same format, or clones of pretty much anyone who's popular, these are an issue. And why? Well...
This is the only door to Tartarus.
Whoa, I think someone put a little doom in this kid's show.
This is a question you have to ask yourself. Why? Well,
wasn't that familiar? It's one thing to be inspired by something, but to just rip it off wholesale? Jeez. How does this guy sleep at night? What's the point of doing... I gotta go. I gotta go water my cat.
Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason why people make these sorts of videos, but obviously this sort of video style has its rise in popularity, and obviously these sorts of videos still have their appeal. For some reason that's beyond the scope of my brain, but regardless, this will be a key point that I need to stress within my video, and will be a key to what I have to say later. Repeating jokes, repeating points, repeating formats. These are signs to me of a problem that plagues our internet scene, and while this sort of thing may not be an issue, it's emblematic when the faults of the original are also then reflected onto the copycats. And it's the meme effect. Not the memes you're thinking of. Okay, technically you're not wrong with that clip. Just play the actual real clip.
Free will is a myth. Religion is a joke. It's controlled by something greater. Memes. The DNA of the soul. They shape our world. They are the culture. They are everything we pass on.
He went on to define memes as a different kind of self-replicating unit. They're the genes of a culture, from fashion to chord progressions in music, even political expression. And just like normal genes, they replicate. They grow, infecting more and more people.
You buy a shirt you like and put it on. Other people see you wearing it, then buy it for themselves.
Yeah, the genes of a culture makes it all sound pretty lofty. But the way Dawkins puts it, memes can also transmit worthless things, even the bad parts of a culture. Fashion's one thing, but value-related memes can put huge restraints on people's lives.
As Metal Gear Rising and of course Richard Dawkins put it, memes also transmit worthless aspects of our culture, including the issues. You can see this happening when the traits of sin videos. How many times must we hear the term Deus Ex Machina not be used appropriately? Damn it, Kojima! Stop using that time machine to make games decades ago that make cultural commentary on today's internet culture! You can see the issue here, right? One channel manages to gain success, and almost immediately several other channels spring up with their own variations of the formula, and a good chunk of those rarely attempt to improve on the formula of the original. In fact, one could say that they are worse, since they also have to keep the faults of the original, and transmit that if the original can get away with it and be successful, well, they can reap the awards as well. It's lemmings! Lemmings everywhere! To be fair, a lot of the Sin clones, while guilty of this, some at least do try to make a spin on the formula. And I'm not just talking about changing the genre. Do you know how many video game and anime Sin channels there are? At least there are those who at the very least put a good spin on it, like Cinema Wins and Anime Wins, and oh god, it's spreading there too. Ugh, I need a drink.
Underage drinking. Arrest him, Spider-Man.
What? I'm not underage,
Hello! I've always wanted to discuss the subject of media criticism of movies and video games and whatnot. I held myself back, however, mainly because I just thought it was just my weird point of view that might be too out there to think about. Like, I'm thinking too hard about something that's just people giving their opinions in reviews and things like that. It wasn't until I saw other YouTubers like Sarah Z with her video Bad Media Criticism, and of course, MangaKamen script, that it actually made me excited. I wasn't the only one who had this idea locked into my head for God knows how long. Now, I do reviews on my channel, mainly horror movies because they are my favorite genre. It's not perfect, far from it, but it's always been fun for me to watch, and I have an appreciation for the art of horror movies that people just don't really care about anymore. Horror has become more of a laughingstock on YouTube, and I think it can be really unfair sometimes. Films like It 2017, Get Out, A Quiet Place, Suspiria 2018, all horror that have shown, if done right, horror can be used effectively and deserve to be taken seriously. I won't go into too much detail since I have plans for my own video about this, but I will say this. When media reviewers started out, they were iconic for their loud, obnoxious, immature personalities. They were known for being overly angry over media that was poorly created, and so bad it was good. When you have a format that's based on crapping on movies that are already terribly created, it gave people a better opportunity to curse, scream, and laugh about the terrible product. The problem is when you bring that mindset into films that are decently created and just have minuscule problems, it leads that once funny mindset to become a toxic mentality with how people view media. I've seen so many reviews point out things that I didn't even think about were that big of an issue, or things that were taken completely out of proportion just to make the film seem stupider than it actually was. Disclaimer, these are just a few movie examples that I thought would be interesting to point out. If you do not agree with my opinions on these, then that is fine by me. Anyway, Venom. Taking a joke that was said and thinking it was part of Venom's backstory when it was just a joke cover-up. Also, reviewers treat this film like it was stale, but if that was the case, all Marvel movies would be considered stale and unoriginal because every movie has the exact same structure until the characters are all put together. Last Jedi. Literally hated everything that was wished for in a Star Wars movie ever. Best example, people wanted Leia to use the Force, she does it, and it was considered bad by default by the fans. Also, the hatred for the Admiral Holdo plot was completely stupid when you realize Poe is a whiny baby that wanted to lead a battle when he had no place to be doing that. Also, the fact that people can't comprehend the idea of Snoke's death, which means Kylo Ren is in charge of the First Order now. Kylo Ren is in charge. That's terrifying enough as it is. Hereditary. Literally the embodiment of the I don't get it, therefore it is bad. It's an abstract horror with a disturbing concept, but because people couldn't read through it because it was quote-unquote too abstract, that means the story is inconsistent. Seriously, it wasn't that hard to figure out. If people seriously can't understand a plot to a movie just because there's no solid beginning, middle, and end, that's not the movie's fault, that's yours. Alright, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks, manga. Also, Lily Orchard's video, that thing was hot garbage.
Pointing at your pointer,
Look at your
which
finger
is
right
different
now.
than
What is
normal
it doing?
pointing.
You are pointing.
You haven't seen
You're
pointing
accusing
until I
me
get
of
through with
pointing
you, and then
while
you'll
you're...
know.
So, if I didn't make it abundantly clear with that joke in the last segment, in that segment alone, or if you ever watched any of my commentaries on He Who Should Not Be Named...
But that's just a theory!
What did I just say? One of the things I hate when it comes to the internet in general is misinformation about a subject. Misinformation is a dangerous meme to spread around. For a great example of that, you'll need to look at Spectre tech drama that happened last year. And if you have no idea what that is, well, lucky you! You didn't have to deal with that huge mess, but if you're a masochist, then maybe check out my video on the subject. But really, misinformation is a problem in every community under that big yellow orb that floats in the sky that we offer versions to every blue moon. But since I'm tired about talking about YouTube drama, let's get back to focusing on that in media. And hey, you remember one of the videos that inspired me to make this video? Yeah, I kinda maybe have a few issues with them.
Dramatic reverb.
What's especially sickening is what I'm about to do is defend someone who might... Well, let's go with this one. I mean, what's the worst that could... Oh, come on! So for those who have the pleasure of not knowing the past of Lily Orchard, first, I envy you. Secondly, she made a video talking about Steven Universe and how much of a hot piece of garbage it was. Granted, I find the video myself to be garbage, and don't you worry, boys and girls, we'll be tackling that later in the video, but what you need to know is that the video is 2 hours long, give or take, and Sarah Z made a video talking about bad media criticism, with Lily's video being one of the focal points. The problem is that it comes off like Sarah Z doesn't really know what she's talking about in regards of Lily Orchard's video. I realize that's a hefty claim, but don't you worry, boys and girls, let's talk about a few points of contention, shall we?
For example, a substantial chunk of her video is dedicated to criticizing the fact that Steven Universe goes on extremely long hiatuses punctuated with large bursts of episodes all at once, which makes the show's pacing awkward. In and of itself, this is a perfectly good point, and it's a valid reason to not enjoy watching the show. But then, Lily turns around and blames this on the show's animators and storyboarders, claiming that this is somehow emblematic of their laziness.
If you binge watch the series now, everything seems fine. The filler episode's biggest problem in retrospect is just that they're boring, and most people would rather be told the cool story about space battles, not the boring story about some loudmouth brat who doesn't have any earlobes. But when you put it into the context of people waiting 6 months after leaving that kid on a hostile alien planet, only to come back and not even bother giving it a passing glance for multiple weeks, people are going to get angry.
Lily blames showrunner Rebecca Sugar for designing a contentious scrapped character that many felt evoked racist imagery, despite the fact that the character was created by Lamar Abrams and Hillary Florido.
Sugar didn't design this, but she seemingly did nothing about its very existence, and it just sat there in the sketchbook. Worse off, when it came time to release the sketchbook, this drawing somehow, beyond all reason, managed to make it into the public hands.
Lily blames showrunner Rebecca Sugar for designing a contentious scrapped character.
Sugar didn't design this, but she seemingly did nothing about its very existence.
Lily blames showrunner Rebecca Sugar for designing a—
Sugar didn't design this. Sugar—
What a twist! Now, does that mean that Sarah Z's entire video is completely moot because I point out these inaccuracies? No, not completely, depending on who you ask. However, since I can point to clips in Lily's video that goes against the narrative that Sarah here is peddling, it does make it seem like Sarah doesn't actually know what she's talking about. Was this intentional or not? I cannot say. I mean, I don't possess the ability to look into the motives of people. I can speculate based on what they say and how they put it across, but at the end of the day, that's speculation and nothing concrete. Still, it is a problem that you'll often find with videos that critique other forms of media, not giving proper context. For that second example that I just listed, Sarah Z makes a claim that if you actually could stomach watching Lily's video without your head bursting into flames, you'd realize it really isn't much of a claim that Lily makes. Now, I could be missing something here. Again, 2 hours of listening to someone ramble on and on is not something you could elicit my full attention, but the issue is with Sarah here not using clips. If you're claiming that something is being said by someone or something in the media you're covering, then clips are kind of necessary to use. Otherwise, I can easily just go to the original source material, find a clip of it, and use it to discredit you. Naturally, this is a bad thing as it leaves a false impression on the media that you're talking about. It makes it seem like you didn't want to research on the topic. And like before, your viewers will believe what you say about the topic, spread it, and misinformation will infect others and will allow the original target to point out these issues in your logic and derail any actual criticism that you may have. It's a dumb practice, but people will do this. They will focus on some of the most minor details in your arguments and analysis and will use that to dismiss your entire thought process. Sad but true.
Goodbye. Oh no!
But hey, that's probably what someone's gonna pull off for me bringing up complaints about Sarah Z's video and some issues that I will find since it's not actually critiquing a piece of media. Now, normally I would respond to this by channeling my inner Agent 47, since someone can make an argument that YouTube videos are a piece of media that can be critiqued as if they were films or whatever you like. But in order to quell those people's nitpick nature, fine, let's talk about Pro Jared and Sonic the Hedgehog.
Because we reinforced only the fun stages to ourselves, we warped our own perspective on the game as a whole.
I swear, if someone claims that line is a joke, I will find you and whack you with some weird-looking fish and escape on dolphins. So, context time, baby. ProJ released a video review on this game Sonic Adventure 2, and let me say,
it's awful.
And a user by the name of Ruby of Blue did a decent response to that review in full. And I'll be pointing out a few points made in the video to get my point across, but there are a few points that I want to bring up.
That's when Sonic has a sudden realization.
The military has mistaken me for the likes of you!
That's stupid. I mean, really? Does anyone actually think they even look remotely alike? Look at them! Shadow's quills curve upward. He has bracelets on. The tuft of hair on his chest is completely different than Sonic's oval thingy. Their shoes are different. How is everybody in the world so dumb that they can't see the differences in Shadow?
This is a common point brought up, and people always ignore this little thing called context. Shadow stole the Chaos Emerald from the bank moving at blitzing speeds at night. All the police know is that a fast-moving hedgehog-like figure stole a Chaos Emerald. Why wouldn't they suspect Sonic?
You can use the hitboxes, but that lowers your score. And if you want to A-rank every stage, you can't use them.
Incorrect. The faster you find an emerald shard, the more points you get from finding it. The way the hitboxes work is they slightly decrease the score you get when you find the next emerald shard, but you can still A-rank a stage while using multiple hitboxes. It all just depends on how fast you find it.
By the way, Rouge is actually a secret agent for the US government. That never really has any relevance to the plot, but there you go.
The fact that he put a line over that cutscene shows how little he paid attention or how little he actually cared about representing the game accurately. Rouge is a freelance spy who is paid in jewels on a mission for the president. Not only does this enrich her character, but it also gives us important information about Project Shadow. Rouge is tasked with spying on Eggman, and later uncovering the truth about Project Shadow. As a result, we learn about the Bio-Lizard, supposedly the true Shadow and the ultimate life form, with no documentation of Shadow the Hedgehog on board the computer in the control room. Rouge confronts Shadow about this later, about how he might not be the real Shadow, and this brings up the concept of his memories being fabricated, which foreshadows what is revealed later and is very important to Shadow's character and the message of the story. So yeah, her being a spy is kind of important to giving us the information we need to know. That cutscene he showed illustrates Rouge's purpose in the story, so I have no idea how he missed this.
And I could continue using clips, but again, redundancy. But hey, I guess when your goal is to say this,
because we reinforced only the fun stages to ourselves, we warped our own perspective on the game as a whole.
Who cares about being accurate about a game? And it's not like Bro Jared is the only one who does this. Consider one of the more analytical voices in video game criticism, Joseph Anderson.
Soma isn't really a horror game. It's not scary in the same ways that a lot of other...
You need only look towards his Soma review where he misconstrues a good portion of the game in order to paint the game as not scary. With it, it's filled with a bit of misinformation. And since I've covered Joseph in the past, let me play some clips with my lovely melodic voice.
Other times, your screen starts to fizzle in warning when you're in danger. This warning that something was nearby became a trigger for me to be annoyed rather than frightened. It was an announcement that one part of the game was over, and that it was now monster time.
This is not true. The tearing can be turned off, and even if you don't have it off, the tearing can occur when there are no enemies around. And the fact that Joseph Anderson here shows the Patchwork Man, an Easter egg enemy who was actually in the game to begin with, but was cut in the final version, this poses no actual legitimate threat to the player, and it contradicts what he's saying.
And unfortunately, because as Joseph himself likes to say,
my opinion is not worth more than anyone else's, but it's undeniable that it has much more influence.
That carries a lot of weight, and that weight can be quite terrible. That isn't to say people aren't allowed to make mistakes. However, it goes to show that when you do get called out, even by your own audience, you need to be able to admit your mistakes. But regardless, when these sorts of statements are thrown into reviews and you happen to have a big voice, well, simply put, you done did a bad. Heck, if you look towards Joseph Anderson's comments on his Soma video, you'll get comments of people saying that they watched his video and said that they had no interest in playing the game.
A very thoughtful video. I can tell a lot of work went into this, and though I have never played Soma, I feel like I finished this video having gained something for it. I am glad I watched your video instead of playing the game. Great explanation. Keep up the good work.
Not only do these sorts of videos paint misconceptions about pieces of media, but then in turn will affect their sales. Don't get me wrong, if some games or movies are legitimately bad and they deserve to be lambasted in your opinion, then they are a product that you shouldn't be supported, more power to you. But if you have to make things up in order to make the product look bad, well, that just makes me not want to trust you.
But sliding spiked death pucks coming out from around the corner you can't see is just bad design.
However, this isn't saying that it's malicious. There's a reason why we have Halon's razor. Never attribute malice to which can be adequately explained by stupidity. Still, color me skeptical when you got someone like Cosmonaut talking smack about the Death Note movie, and he gets things wrong and ignores points.
He says he'll kill L, even though L hasn't done anything evil.
Having a self-preservation instinct is not incompatible with not wanting to murder innocent people. What is it with people watching this movie and forgetting that emotional strain is a thing?
Why didn't Watari finish what he was saying before he died?
Because Light only wrote this.
Watari becomes obsessed with revealing the true identity of the detective known as L.
Did you just write in the Death Note, Watari finds the information and reads it to Light, but if anyone breaks in and interrupts him, he has to stop in the middle of his sentence and die.
Ryuk could have interpreted Dealer's Choice that way to fuck with Light.
So anyway, a bunch of shit happens that isn't important.
Nothing important happens?
You said Dealer's Choice.
Is that because you don't find it important that Ryuk flat out says why you were wrong about the last thing you said?
When it's the Death Note movie, one of the worst adaptations known to man, really causing to question the ability to critique things and makes me wonder if you didn't fall asleep while watching the film. I get it, Death Note live action, not really the best thing to watch. But hey, I guess if it gets views and subs, it's all good. Who cares about spreading misinformation if clicks are what you want? After all, money makes the world go round.